Our speaker today has been networking online since before the internet, going back to the days of BBS bulletin boards. He has used online networking to find clients and jobs, to hire and manage a remote team of over 30 consultants, to initiate an $8 million corporate merger, to find and collaborate with the co-author of his first book. They actually completed the book before they ever met in person. As the entrepreneur's guide at About.com, he grew it from 150,000 monthly visitors to helping over 1 million entrepreneurs every month start and grow their business. He has been a pioneer in the field of social media. In 2002, he taught the world's first workshop in online networking and launched his business as the world's first social media consultant. In 2004, he worked with LinkedIn to develop and deliver their first training. In 2005, his book, The Virtual Handshake, became the first book on social media marketing. He authored a patent application for using social listening to help companies monitor compliance by independent representatives and affiliates. Most recently, he worked for General Motors as social innovation architect, helping them keep up with all the latest social media technology and figure out how to apply it at GM. They recruited him for that job from his LinkedIn resume, of course. Please help me welcome the legendary, inimitable Scott Allen.
Thank you, Kathy, for that glowing introduction, which I wrote. Yeah, they say that you're not supposed to brag about yourself. Let somebody else read it for you. Yeah, that is a tip. If you ever have an opportunity to do a speaking engagement, yeah, take advantage of letting it come in someone else's voice. Yeah, so I have her share all that stuff, not to feed my ego, not to impress you, but to impress upon you that I kind of might sort of know what I'm talking about with this stuff. So pay a little extra close attention. I'm going to promise to you right now that you are going to learn at least 3, 5, 7, 9, 10 things today that you did not know. And I'm also going to promise you to walk out of here with at least 3 very specific action items for you. If I don't meet that promise, I'm going to stick around afterwards. I'll be happy to talk to you so we make sure that that does get met. Now, all of that stuff aside, I think the most impressive thing about what I'm about to tell you today is that this presentation has basically not changed in 15 years. Okay, when we wrote the book, we were writing the book. LinkedIn launched while we were writing our book. Facebook opened up to the general public while we were writing our book. Twitter did not exist. Instagram did not exist. So we didn't want to write a book that was how to win friends on Facebook and influence people on Instagram. First of all, that would have been amazing if we had been that prescient 15 years ago. But we wanted to talk about something that was independent of the tools that you're using. Right? It really doesn't matter whether you're using a handsaw or a chainsaw to chop down the tree. Yeah, how you use the tool is a little different, but how you approach the tree is the same, right? These are just tools. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is not the specifics of the tools, but I'm going to talk to you about a strategy for particularly managing your online network. I think you're going to find it's really going to be helpful in how you approach all of your relationship building face-to-face as well as online. Anybody ever seen any of these books? One of these came out in 2004 while they were writing their book. 101 Commandments of Networking, 101 Tips on Networking, 101 Networking Tips, 101 Tips to Becoming a Networking Genius. There's probably some overlap between those books, but if you even read one of them, you think you're honestly going to be able to apply 101 networking tips? And how are you going to decide which ones you're going to apply? What most people will do is they'll go, well, that one sounds fun. I can do that one. But what's missing is how to align it with your actual objectives. What's missing is strategy. Now, we hear a lot, if you read online about social media and online networking, you're going to read a lot of stuff about tactics. Tactics are a dime a dozen and they change all the time. Tactics are built with strategy, timeless, Strategy has to be built on your purpose. So what I'm going to focus on today is a little bit about purpose and then connecting that to strategy. First thing is, what do you really want? What do you really want out of it? Now, this is kind of a harsh quote. This is straight out of our book. People who know how to leverage their networks are called successful. People who just know a lot of people are called socialites. Do you want to be successful or do you want to be a socialite? It's not just about meeting people and making connections. Now, I know this sounds kind of harsh and cold and calculated. Could not be further from the truth. Are we, all right, I'm going to change microphones there. How's that? Okay, so that could not be further from the truth. When you are engaged with people, whether it's face-to-face or online or an email conversation, you absolutely value people. When you are talking to someone, they are the most important person in the world. Michael, right now, you are the most important thing in the world to me. Stephen, right now, you are the most important thing in the world to me. The question is, when you make your decisions about who to spend your time with and where to go and meet people and how to engage, then the most important thing needs to be your scarcest and most valuable resource, which is your time. So I am not at all saying that you should treat people as numbers or statistics. What I'm saying is being strategic and organized and intentional about how you spend your time will massively, massively increase the value of your networking activities. Now, I'm going to ask you to make a really big leap of faith with me here. I'm going to ask you to make a really big shift. This is what we might call an abundance mindset or a growth mindset. What is the purpose of your network? The purpose of your network is not to find something that is hard to find. On LinkedIn, right now, there are 75,000 active job listings in the Austin area. Austin unemployment is about 2.5%. That's only about 25,000 people that are actually out of work and looking to fill those 75,000 jobs. Now, some of those 75,000 jobs are going to be filled by someone who's already working, but guess what? That means their job came available. And I don't think there's 50,000 people a month moving here from California or Minnesota. Not yet. Not yet, right? But the point is, you want me to find you a job? There's 74,381 of them. That's not the problem. The problem isn't finding a job. The problem is finding the right job for you, that one right job. This is not a problem of discovery. This is a problem of filtering, right? So that's what I want to focus on, is I want to focus on how to filter, how to leverage your network to make sure that the right opportunities get to you. Now, one of the other things that is a little harsh lesson, a lot of people talk about serendipity and the importance of serendipity. Listen, one of my favorite quotes in the world is from Louis Pasteur, who said, "Fortune favors the prepared mind." That's how you make your own luck, is you be ready. But serendipity is not a strategy. Process plus focus is what gives you predictable results. Now let's talk about what I call the 7 keys to a powerful network. The first one is character. Now, character it certainly starts with your real character. It certainly starts with your values, your integrity, your clarity of motives, all these other things. But when we talk about it in a networking context, you also have to have the people you know be aware of what your character is. So this is the perception of your character by your network. Now, why does this matter? First and foremost, people do business with people they know, like, and trust. In many cases, they hire people they know, like, and trust.
Now, if you're applying for a state job, you're going through that application process. It's going to not be as much of a factor as it is if you're looking at a new position at a startup where everything is about cultural fit. That's the other thing, is cultural fit. That's where your character, your values, the way you live your life and the way you present is going to become a major part of the hiring process. The second key is your competence. Can you walk the walk? Do you have demonstrated capability and expertise? This, of course, is, or at least should be, the number one factor in hiring, is have you demonstrated that? Have you demonstrated your capability to do that job? This is also a matter of not only are you actually competent, but have you been able to demonstrate it as part of the hiring process? So why does it matter? It's the most important factor. But it also is because you need to make sure that it gets demonstrated during the hiring process. And a lot of times, an hour interview isn't enough to demonstrate that. Your resume isn't necessarily enough to demonstrate that. That's why we want to show our work, right? That's why we want to show our work online. That's why we want to get endorsements and recommendations and other things that demonstrate our competence as at the outset of the hiring process. The third key is the number of people in your network. How many people do you know? And this is both your strong relationships, your family, your friends, as well as general acquaintances, and depending on what your goals are, maybe even how many of those, yes, I'd be happy to connect with you on LinkedIn, even though all I've done is just basically figure out that you're not a spammer. Right? It does have an effect. It's obviously not the same value. It's obviously not the same value as the relationship we're building here, your uncle, whatever it may be, but it does have an impact, again, depending on what your goals are. Why does it matter? Well, very simply, more relationships equals more opportunities. Have any of you all ever heard the phrase, the strength of weak ties? It's, I think Kathy, you've talked about it a little while ago. So there's a research paper that was done in sort of the early days of this stuff that found that the vast majority of jobs and word-of-mouth customers and everything else came through what we called weak ties. Now, one thing I do want to emphasize, since we're talking about it, is there's a little bit of a myth. A weak tie is not the person who you just connected with on LinkedIn and said, yeah, sure, happy to connect because we're both LinkedIn open networkers, right? The weak tie is someone who at least has some basis of knowing what you can do and who you are. So, not that there's no value in the other, but it really has more to do with search visibility than in actually expecting that they're going to give you a referral for a job or make a meaningful recommendation. So, yeah. Next thing. The strength of your relationships. How strong is the tie? Right? History, depth, there's all kinds of ways that you can build stronger relationships. We all kind of have a pretty good instinctive feel for our relationships with our family and our best friend of however many years versus the people we've just met a couple of times. And this also reflects the willingness to have reciprocity, right? You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Why does this matter? This is one of the most important ones, and I think one of the most misunderstood ones in the context of online. There's a concept called the action threshold. This is, I've bolded this because this is one of the things I want you to take home. This is going to be on your list of 10 things you didn't know. The concept of the action threshold is basically how well does someone have to know you to take action on your behalf. Now, it's contextual, right? If I'm standing in line and I'm 6 cents short, the absolute stranger standing in line behind me might be willing to pop up the 6 cents or the dollar or whatever it may be, right? On the other hand, if I need to borrow $100, they're gonna need, it's gonna need to be friends and family, or probably. If I want to get funded for my business from a VC, and I need a $7 million seed round, guess what? They're gonna get to know you really, really well. I've been through a couple of those VC fundraisers. I've been through merger due diligence. Man, that is an excruciating process. You're gonna find out all kinds of stuff. You're gonna build a very strong relationship in that process. So it is dependent on how well they know you. So the fact of the matter is if you don't build strong enough relationships that for whatever your ask is, they're over the action threshold, not to be harsh about it, but effectively that relationship is useless. It doesn't have value towards you accomplishing your goals. Now, there's a higher threshold that we call the proactive action threshold, which is how well do you have to know someone for them to take action on your behalf, not in response to a request from you, not reactively, but proactively. Right? Is Marina still here? Marina referred me on a job last week. I didn't ask her to. Right? We've established enough of a relationship. We've gotten over, at least in this context, that proactive action threshold. This is why, even online, you need to build a little bit stronger relationships, because this is when you start what's called the network effect. The network effect is when other people start working for you without you asking them to. The network effect is why I haven't looked for a job in 17 years. The network effect is why I didn't even really have to do much working for clients. I just had a steady feed of clients, and 2 out of the 3 full-time jobs I've had in the last 17 years were clients who then turned around and hired me, right? This is network effect, right? So leverage is what you're going for. Leverage is where you get a massive multiplier of your efforts. So this is the number one concept I want you to take home with you today, is to really realize that you want to build strong enough relationships for people to take action on your behalf based on what your current context is, based on what your current ask is. Any questions on that? All right. The fifth key is information. Right, this is the basics: name, email, phone number, contact information. The employer actually has your resume, or your LinkedIn profile, or whatever it may be. You also can add to this things like their professional background, their personal interests, their family information, all of these kinds of things. Why does this matter? Very simply, information makes relationships actionable. All right, I went to the Austin Digital Jobs event Tuesday night. There was a company there that was recruiting, and I spoke to the recruiter. The recruiter didn't have cards. I didn't either, so I got to own part of this too. Right, but the recruiter didn't have cards. She gave me a little flyer that had the website of the company on it. Guess what? The website of the company does not have a jobs/careers link anywhere, not under the About Us, etc. It has a Meet the Team page. And she wasn't on the Meet the Team page. Right? Small company. She wasn't on the Meet the Team page. I went on LinkedIn, and I remembered her name. I would have recognized her or her picture. I went on LinkedIn and I looked for employees in Austin of that company. Now, there are 20 some odd employees of that company on their Meet the Team page, plus obviously at least a few others who aren't on that Meet the Team page. Actually, no recruiters were on the Meet the Team page. That was an interesting thing. None of the recruiters were on the Meet the Team page. No one in HR. It was all sales, management, developers, etc. Right? So, so I went on LinkedIn looking for employees of that company. 8 people listed as employees of that company in Austin, Texas. So I Google the company name and jobs. Glassdoor comes up, shows some of the job listings on Glassdoor. I'm like, well, okay, well, fine. I'll apply for it. I'll apply through there, and we'll just follow that route. And then I saw their 3.1 stars on Glassdoor, and I stopped. Yeah. So point. Yeah, well, so point being, simply the lack of information made the 15 minutes of rapport that we had built completely inactionable. So literally the value of the relationship went to 0. It's a multiplier of all the other stuff. It is a multiplier of all the other stuff. Now, why else does information matter? This is an interesting one. Information can help grow the strength of the relationship. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later. But information can help grow the strength of the relationship. You can get to know each other better by the exchange of information. It's not all about the handshake and the eye contact. Really, actually, that knowledge, doing your homework before you meet people or after you meet people, really can help with that bonding process. All right, number 6. Relevance. Now, this one's, again, another one of those harsh things because we don't ever want to think about the flip side of that, of thinking that someone, a human being, is irrelevant. No, it's a matter of context. Can this person help me with my current goals? Right? Can this person help me with my current goals? So maybe, your uncle who's retired from the oil field, probably not going to be a big help in helping you find a Java development job in Austin. Much as you love him, okay, it's not relevant for that context. It is not a value judgment on the person. It's a matter of, are they relevant to supporting your current needs? Now, it's also, it's not just who you know, but it's who they know. So a lot of their value in the context has to do with the value of their relationships and the relevance of their relationships. Why does this matter? Because your time and energy, are limited. Not just your time, your energy. Anybody else get exhausted with their job search? Right? And it's like, I've got another 2 hours, and it's not even 1 a.m. yet, so. But I'm just done for today, or this week, or this month, right? So your time and your energy are limited, and your need is urgent. Anybody here want a job 3 months from now? Well, yeah, you want to still have it 3 months from now, but you want it now. You want it next week, right? So that's why relevance matters. Right now, you need to focus your time and energy on those relationships and those interactions that can best help you accomplish this immediate need. Focus. And that's, we're going to talk a little bit more about how to pick out those things that are relevant. And the last key is diversity. Okay, this is people in different geographies, professions, industries. I have a friend of mine from when I was sort of first starting in the space. He wrote a book, and I love this concept. He ran a networking group in London. Became a good friend of mine. We've never met in person, but have been good friends for 18 years now. He wrote a book called A Friend in Every City. Wow, isn't that an amazing goal? I actually have, I haven't been as active with it lately, but I set this goal that, I kind of set this idea that I would love to have someone in every major city in the world, or at least every country in the world, who I knew well enough that Maybe they wouldn't necessarily put me up at their house, but they might. But they'd certainly take a day and show me around, right? So that's, you definitely want to have diversity in your relationship. And also, you want to have diversity by age, gender, ethnicity, political orientation, and so on. Probably one of the most dangerous things about online engagement is that we get into these bubbles, right? We get into these bubbles where we only interact with people like us. We actually do that face-to-face too. That it's gotten a lot of attention lately that we have this echo chamber online. We do that face-to-face too. So there's nothing special about the internet in that regard. Why does diversity matter? Well, because the people who can help you find your next job may not be the people who can help you find a job when you want to change careers or when you want to move, when your spouse gets relocated and you find that you are looking for a new job in a new town, right? They may also not be the people who can help you find a plumber, plan a wedding, all of these kinds of things. So in terms of long-term value, you absolutely want to have a diverse network as well. The long and short of all of that is that different needs require different networks. Your needs as a job seeker are different than your needs as a salesperson, as a marketing person, as a professional developer, whatever it may be. Your needs as a job seeker looking for a Java developer position at a large corporation are different than the needs of you as a job seeker looking for a position as the director of an aquatics facility. I don't think she's here today, but, oh yeah, there you are, right? Right, so if you think about this, right, the Java developer position for a large company, getting that job is largely going to be focused on your competence, right? These jobs that require certifications, these jobs, all these job positions that are looking for certifications, that's the number one thing up front is, can you demonstrate that competence and have you done it in a way that's visible? When you're talking about something that we can count on our fingers the number of opportunities in town that are a fit for you, it is all about those strong relationships, right? It's all about how well do they know you? Do they know, like, and trust you? Because you got to get through that before you're going to get hired for that position. So you got to think about your job search and the kinds of, what do you need to get the kinds of jobs, the kind of roles that you're looking for. Now let's talk a little bit about how some of these things interact with each other. First and foremost, the most important thing is understanding that there are time constraints. We already talked about that that's your most valuable and most scarce resource. Strength and number are a balancing act. It takes time to build and maintain relationships. Put simply, the more people you know, the less well you know them. Right? And relevance versus diversity. This is also a balancing act. Right? What you're doing is you're meeting recruiters and hiring managers in your field and in your target companies. That's a different set of people than the people who can help you when you want to move, when you want to change careers, when you want to plan a wedding, so on and so forth. So, simple strategy, focus on relevance for immediate needs, focus on diversity for long-term insurance and the broader aspect of your life. All right, one slide specifically talking about online. How is online different in regards to these keys? First off is reaching large numbers of people is much easier. All right, how many people are in this room?
8.
Right, so under 100. I can write a blog post and reach 1,000. I have 25,000 LinkedIn connections. Like if I wanted to, I could go share that link with every one of them. It'd require automation or a lot of my time or an outsourced virtual assistant in the Philippines. Right? There are ways to do it, but point is there are much easier ways to reach very large numbers of people online. more information faster. We speak it about 70 words a minute, 80 words a minute. We read at typically at least 200 to 300 words per minute. When we're talking, it is what we call single duplex or half duplex, which is I talk, you listen, you talk, I listen. In the minute we each only have 30 seconds to share our side of the conversation. If we have that same minute online, you're reading my profile while I'm reading your profile. So let's just take the simple example of two people spending 1 minute to getting to know each other. Let's be optimistic and say they're fast talkers. And they each speak 100 words a minute. So they each get 50 words in their 30 seconds. Versus 300 if we read each other's profiles. Which way do you think we're going to get to know each other faster? Right. So if you are not taking the time to read someone's profile, to scan through at least their last few tweets, or if they have a public Facebook, you are seriously missing out on the opportunity to get to know that person. And the worst thing, I hate this. I hate when someone contacts me on, someone I meet on LinkedIn and I'm like, hey, great that you're doing a first personal touch, but if your first message is, hey, where are you from? What do you do? What is this? AOL Instant Messenger from like 1996? Come on, right? No, read my profile. And if you still want a conversation, then great, we'll have it. But yeah, absolutely it's one of the most important things you can do is take advantage of the speed at which you can get that additional information. And the fact that you can even get all that information that's connected, right? I mean, literally all we got to do is, pop open LinkedIn, one of us scan the other person's QR code, and if you've set it up right, guess what? From there, I can find your company, I can find your blog, I can find your Twitter, I can find your Facebook, right? So I can go discover your whole online life just from one little click interaction. You can show your competence in more depth. Really, how much are you going to be able to show about what you know in an hour interview? Now, sometimes you have these process of going through 3, 4, 5, 6 hours of interviews. Most of that is not spent figuring out your competence, it's spent figuring out your character. They're figuring out if they like you, trust you, if you're a cultural fit, right? The competent stuff usually kind of gets a little bit of short shrift in the interview process, whereas online, they can see your certifications, they can see your work, they can see your publications, they can see your short thinking in your comments on relevant industry articles, right? Diversity and relevance are easier because we can search. We can be deliberate that we are wanting to meet tech recruiters in Austin, Texas. We can be deliberate that we are looking for people who are VPs of sales at whatever kind of company in Austin, Texas. So we can be very, very deliberate, way more so than we can in most online and most face-to-face events. And especially, you may go to a face-to-face event that's fairly targeted, but who you randomly encounter, not nearly the same as laser focusing in because you did that LinkedIn search. Diversity is also easier, right? Because you can find specifically, you can stretch outside your comfort zone. You can go find international friends on Facebook. Okay? Strength and character are perceived as harder. We think that we can't build strong relationships online. I will tell you this, get a copy of my book, which is free. I'll tell you about it at the end. But get a copy of the book and read the first chapter, and I will change your mind about building strong relationships. If I haven't changed your mind in the first chapter, then read the chapter on strength, and I'll change your mind there. They are perceived as harder. because we're more comfortable with face-to-face. But the reality is it just requires a different tool set. There are specific techniques, and we'll talk about them. Here's the one little fun fact. People tend to like each other better when they first meet online. Why? Well, part of it is that we're highly self-conscious. And we actually, we have our guard up when we meet face-to-face. When we're at least have a little bit of sort of anonymity and distance, we actually tend to be more willing to be vulnerable online than in face-to-face interactions. We're not worried about the fact that we're sweating a little bit, right? So yeah, that was one of our big surprises when we were kind of going through the research on that. All right, here we're going to start. You want to take in your notes and you want to make a list of 1, 2, 3. You cannot do all of this at the same time. We've already talked about you can't work on strength and numbers really at the same time. You can't work on diversity and relevance at the same time. I want you to narrow this to 3. 3 of these keys that are most relevant for you in your immediate need, which I'm assuming is your job search, and for the kind of companies and the kind of roles you're hiring for. Okay? Pick 3. And you're going to focus your activities on 3 of these things. All right, let's go into some specifics. How do you boost your character? How do you boost your character, or rather the perception of your character? Wow, the first one is really simple. Walk the talk. Be nice. Be respectful. Be professional. Even when you're talking politics and religion. Doesn't mean I'm not saying you can't do that. I'm not saying don't talk about politics and religion online, but be nice, be respectful when you do. Number 2 is this is one of the simplest ones, and one of the ones which honestly I fail at more often than I care to admit, is make and keep micro commitments. I'll call you on Monday. Call them on Monday. I'll send you a link to that article we talked about. Send them the link to the article that you talked about. These, the perception of character, one's reputation, company culture is built by small, repeated actions and habits, right? So this is one of the most important ways that even very early on you can start really upping their perception of you, is by making and keeping these small commitments. And thirdly is create value everywhere you go. There's all kinds of ways you can do that, right? I know some people, well, we've got a whole program here that's based on volunteering with your expertise. I know some people, I've heard people say, do your volunteer, don't volunteer your services. Volunteer, do something else. If you're a Java developer, go build a house for Habitat for Humanity. Okay, fine if that's what you want to do, but if you're talking about building your professional reputation, there is nothing you can do that demonstrates the value of what you do more than to give it in service to another person or another organization. Let me repeat that. There is nothing you can do to demonstrate the value of what you do more than to give it in service to another person or organization. Okay? And that doesn't have to be formal volunteerism. That can be the matter of, we're both out of work, but sure, I'll look over your resume. Sure, I'll, actually read your article and like and comment on it. Right? It's simple little things, but those things, you creating value for the other person, is one of the best ways that you can boost their perception of your character. How to boost competence. Show your work. I always hated that in math class, right? Show your work. I know the answer. I want to show my work. No, you've got to show your work. You've got to put that out there. If you've written a book, if you've written a white paper, if you've created logos, whatever it may be, have a portfolio. Have them linked on your LinkedIn profile. Social proof, recommendations. Have other people talk about how great you are, even if you have to write it for them. You can do that with LinkedIn recommendations. I know Kathy said it, some other people have said it. Don't ask them to just, to write the whole thing. You may not know what you get, right? Give a draft and then let them, edit in their own voice, but give them an idea what it is, make it appropriate to what you think your relationship with them is. But yeah, absolutely, get that social proof. And thirdly is be a pro in your industry. Be a pro in your industry. Get the certifications that are appropriate for your industry. Get in the professional associations. Get in the LinkedIn groups, the Facebook groups, and participate in those things that are for your industry. How do you boost the number of people in your network? First of all is take massive action. If the number of people in your network is on your list of the 3 things you need to work on, you should be spending, I would say, at least an hour a day doing stuff that focuses on getting to know more people, reaching more people. Massive action. Publish, interact, get out. There's just no substitute for that. Choose public interaction over private, right? I'm building relationships with 80 people here, as opposed to if I spent this having a 2-hour meeting with one of you, would build a lot stronger relationship having that one-on-one. But if I'm focusing on the numbers, right, reaching 80 people lightly is going to be a better use of your time. Simple. And then thirdly is publish. Publish or perish. Create content. Okay, choose your medium, right? It does not matter. I don't care whether it's doing public speaking, doing webinars, writing articles, writing, clever little Twitter quotes that, whatever it may be, but choose your medium and consistently publish and put it out there. How do we build strength, particularly online? Number 1 is create value for them. So I'll tell you a little story about our book. It is probably one of the most heavily peer-reviewed books ever published, and I'm including scientific ones. We had, during the time that we were writing the book, over about a 2-year period, everybody else that was in this space, we got on their blogs, we promoted their blogs, we interacted, we read their books. I probably read through the drafts of probably 10 to 12 books in that 2-year period and gave really real feedback on it. So guess what? When we had our manuscript completed, we had a list of 300 people. We had a list of 300 people who we had been building relationships, who we sent the draft to and asked them for feedback. 170 of them, 170 people gave us feedback on our book. That is way more than the peer review on most scientific books and papers, right? Why? Why were they willing to do that? Why were they above that action threshold? Because we had created value for them in whatever way it was, right? We had invested the time in those relationships. And notice that has, most of these people, we never met in person, right? The number 1 way to build strength has nothing to do with face-to-faceness, okay? Second way is be vulnerable, be open, right? Y'all all know the story about why the handshake? The handshake is vulnerability. The handshake is from medieval knights taking off their gauntlet and willing to expose, not just expose their hand, but expose their sword hand. So the handshake is a metaphor for vulnerability. That's why our book's called The Virtual Handshake, right? So being willing to be vulnerable. One of the things that can happen a lot online, right, is we get into this sort of cult of positivity. Oh, my life is so awesome. Look, here's me with my kid, and we're, eating cotton candy, and and there can be this sort of cult of positivity. You have got to be willing to be real and be vulnerable, even if you are in a very high-powered, authoritative position. Maybe even especially if you are in a high-powered, authoritative position. Right? Again, nothing to do with face-to-faceness. In fact, it's generally easier online. Right? And then finally, this is another one, I should have bolded this one, leveraging information. This is what I call the discovery of multiplexity. Now that is the $2 phrase for today. This goes right up there with proactive action threshold is one of the things I want you to take away. The discovery of multiplexity. What is multiplexity? Multiplexity is, simply put, it's figuring out the stuff we have in common. That's it. Big word, but nice one word that basically says figuring out the stuff we have in common. You ever met someone, right, and you're sitting there chatting, and after a while it's like, yeah, I love dogs too. What kind of dogs do you have? Oh, pugs? Oh, I love pugs. I have pugs too, right? Oh, you're from Houston? Yeah, I grew up in Houston. What part of town? Oh, Seabrook. Yeah, I lived in Seabrook for a while. Right? Yeah, there we go, right? So this process is the fastest way to build trust and rapport. Now remember what we talked about earlier about the speed of information transfer? 1 minute talking face to face, we've exchanged, each of us is given 50 words versus if we go and read each other's profiles, we got 300 words in that minute. The fastest way to build trust is to do your homework on someone, find those commonalities, discover the multiplexity, have it ready at your fingertips, and and use that in your interaction with them. Fastest way to build rapport, again, not only does it have nothing to do with online versus face-to-face, it's actually easier to do online than it is face-to-face. Okay? All right. Top three ways to boost information about people in your network. Number one is put it in a system. You can't keep all this crap in your head. Your brain is meant for having ideas, not holding them. Okay? There's, any of y'all ever heard, oh, Kathy, you talked about this when you talked about the coaches a couple weeks ago, talked about the Dunbar number, 150 people. Y'all heard that before? Or maybe I'm getting my presentations mixed up. Well, so some research was basically done on, this guy did some research on primate brains. Right? We're primates and we have brains, so it's relevant. What they found was that the size of the social groups of various primates was directly proportional to the size of their cerebral cortex. And extrapolating it to humans based on size came up with the number 150. It's called the Dunbar number. And what that is it's basically the number of close relationships you can keep track of in your head. As Dunbar himself put it, it's basically the number of people that you'd feel comfortable if you ran into a bar inviting yourself to join them. Right? Hey, good to see you. Mind if I sit down with you? That's about 150 people. Now, here's another word that, didn't put this in the slide, but here's another really important phrase. Distributed cognition. Distributed cognition, write it down. Basically, it is making your mind, your cognition, your processing power, your storage capacity, bigger than your brain. It's leveraging systems to scale. Distributed cognition. Now, why do we do this? We do not do this so that we can fake caring. We do not do this so that we can fake caring. We do this so that we can act in a way that is consistent with the fact that we do care, but goes beyond the limited capacity of our human brain to only handle about 150 relationships. Right? So that's something. Kathy, did you have a question on that?
No, I was just going to say that I remember reading about the Gore company that makes Gore-Tex. When they have 150 people in a company, they build another building.
Oh, yeah.
They don't allow more than that because that's the amount that can work together successfully. It's not overwhelmingly big, it's not too small. That's their prime number.
Yeah, they've found that number repeatedly, that there ends up being sort of a whole nother level of complexity that happens when you start scaling over that, and you need to keep to working groups of that size or smaller. David?
From an evolutionary standpoint, that's the size of the tribal groups in Africa.
Right, yeah. So if you don't want to be limited to your online tribe being the size of a tribal group in Africa, then you've got to go beyond the capacity of your brain. So put it in an external system. Second way is do your homework before meetings and after, right? Go in with the information fresh on your mind. Go in so that you can know how to leverage it, how to use it to build rapport, how to use it to fast track the conversation, build trust quickly. And then finally is connect on LinkedIn. Here's the amazing thing about LinkedIn that nobody ever talks about. Collectively, you know what the biggest challenge with CRM systems always was? The customer relationship management, contact management systems, was keeping the information up to date. Companies spent collectively billions of dollars, right? And if we're all sitting there trying to keep track of each other in just in our email systems, I've got to get an update from you and you and you and you and you anytime that information changes. By just being connected on LinkedIn one time, we have current information about each other forever. I don't have to notify people that I've changed jobs. I don't have to notify people that I've changed my phone number or my email address, etc. We connect one time. You realize what a massive saving in effort that is to society? This is the big reason that as much as I have my love-hate relationship with LinkedIn, I will always lean towards the loving it because of that reason right there. They have done a massive service to society by being able to connect once, and that's it. How do you boost relevance? Network with your peers, right? Other job seekers hear about things that aren't a fit for them. The other job seekers are among your most relevant contacts right now. We had the talk last week when Craig was talking about about the value of job teams and that working together as a team increased at 20-something% more, found jobs basically a month faster, right? LinkedIn plus targeted search. Figure out who is your ideal hiring manager. Figure out the kind of recruiters you want to work with, and search. Take advantage of the 30-day free trial if you haven't already, and after that you might want to consider the paid trial or the paid membership so that you can do those highly targeted searches depending on how much of it you're doing. And lastly is do your homework and be selective about your time, especially face-to-face and phone time. Online, you know what? Here's the thing. People think, I got to sit there and be there and I got to reply. No. Life happens. People understand that. You walk away, you're not necessarily, just because you posted, going to be right there sitting there for an hour to interact with everyone who comments on your post, right? So you have a lot more flexibility with your online interaction. When you commit to an hour with someone face-to-face or on the phone, you must single task, right? You can't time slice. So be very, very, I have been someone who, because I haven't been in sales roles with local people in forever, I generally don't do, when I'm working, I generally don't do a lot of one-on-one face-to-face meetings. It's a huge time suck. I love it. I mean, there is nothing more than I'd love to sit down with you, Mike, and have a cup of coffee and talk for an hour. There's nothing more. And for that hour, you'll be the most important person in the world to me, right? But it is a huge time drain. It would take me 2 weeks to do that with everybody in here, full time, right? So you have to be very very thoughtful about that. How do we boost diversity? Number one is respect and embrace diversity. It seems so obvious, but I thought I'd better say it. Live diversely. Engage in a variety of activities. Find things that stretch you outside of your comfort zone. And then finally is build relationships beyond the context of when you meet people. So we meet people here. Build relationships beyond that. Have some email follow-ups with people. Get together a small group. Get together a job search team, right? Build the relationships beyond hanging out in the parking lot. Actually, even hang out in the parking lot for a few minutes or hang around for chat afterwards and strengthen those relationships, right? That's part of how you embrace the diversity. All right, remember those 3 things you wrote down before? What 3 of these do you want to focus on? What you're going to do now, you don't have to write this in a minute, but your homework is to take and create a super simple action plan. You don't have to do the whole thing. We're just going to talk about, I'm big. Any of y'all familiar with GTD, Getting Things Done, David Allen? So I'll highly recommend that. By the way, I'll name drop a little bit. That's Uncle David to me, truly. So I don't know that it means that I actually know anything more about GTD, but I kind of have this moral obligation to do it well, right? But he really focuses on what's the one next action. What is the one next action for those 3 things? I've given you some ideas here. What's the one next action that you can do to boost each of those 3 things? Put it on your calendar, put it on your to-do list, put it in your system, whatever your system may be. Write it on a Post-it note, 1, 2, 3, and stick it on your fridge or whatever it may be. But take the one next action in 3 of these areas. How do you connect and learn more? There's all my contact info. I will, of course, make this deck available.